I'm jumping on a little bandwagon for this one because I think it would be fun to join in. It's the video titled Reasonable Questions for Anti-SJWs, and I'm an anti-SJW, so I'm going to add in what I consider to be reasonable answers. Before I start though, I've seen the first few answers that Dr. Randall Markham gave, so I won't be answering those ones. I don't want to end up sounding like he's putting words into my mouth. I've not watched past Phil Moriarty's first scene, so I'll start at the one after that. Then I'm going to go back and watch the rest of the Doctor's video. Possibly some of the other videos that have been brought up as well, and it's only fair. I know that Shoe on Head has done one, and there was another woman who I didn't recognise. So, let's go.
Are you aware that the ridiculous buzzwords you helped to popularize, like SJW and cuck and regressive, have all lost whatever meaning they once had and only serve now as catch-all insults and pejoratives to derail any meaningful conversation?
Are you aware that when SJWs refer to catcalling as sexual harassment and claim that looking at a woman is stare rape, this is causing actual sexual harassment and actual rape to lose all meaning? When a woman says now, I was raped, society has to ask, were you really raped? Or did someone you find ugly just say that you were pretty? When SJWs are claiming that when a doctor inserts something into a woman's vagina to solve a difficulty during birth that could kill both mother and child without asking permission is birth rape. We have to wonder, what will happen when a woman goes to the police to claim rape? Are we going to be throwing a man into prison for forcibly having sex with her or for smiling at her? We're not the ones using buzzwords like cultural appropriation, sexist, or racist to describe any situation that makes us offended on behalf of someone we've never met and never will, who would never have even thought about getting offended by those words until some SJW somewhere said it was offensive.
In videos and in the comment sections, anti-feminists often take up the most extreme or the weakest feminist position they can find, or they just straight up misrepresent what the feminist position is. Instead, why not take up the strongest, most robust feminist argument you can find and really challenge yourself?
Ew! What is that? Oh, sorry, it's Christy Winter. So, Christy, what is the feminist position then? The official feminist position? I've heard loads of different feminists giving different positions. If feminists can't even agree amongst themselves, how are we supposed to know what the correct interpretation of a sexist, racist organisation is until you can reliably tell me? You see what I did there? Why bother when the weakest argument is sufficient to refute the weakest argument? When feminists can all get together and tell me what reasonable causes feminism has to work for, I'll think about it. And if I don't agree, I'll tell you why. Maybe you can listen to my disagreement instead of blocking me. Until then, I don't care if pretty women feel sexually harassed by ugly guys when they get catcalled, any more than I care that ugly women feel they are sexually harassed when good-looking guys don't catcall them.
I am deeply concerned with male addiction rates, suicide rates, and abuse rates, because I have worked with these issues in the quote-unquote real world. Would you be willing as anti-feminists to put aside your differences with feminists for the greater good of addressing these issues, especially as the kind of solutions needed are not necessarily gendered? And if so, I would actually like you to let me know, because I'm not fucking around or presenting any gotchas here. I actually really think that we could get something done if we work together. So, yeah.
When the good feminists start calling out people like these,
Be fucking ashamed of yourself. You're fucking scum. You are fucking scum. Fucking rape apologist, incest supporting, woman hating, fucking scum.
Is there someone else I can wait to see more follow me?
Fucking scum. Yeah, just another.
I just want to listen to someone else's opinion. I'm not even on a side here. I just listen to as many people as I can.
You know what though? Why would you pay money to fucking support a fucking rape apologist if you weren't fucking one?
I've never heard him say anything that was.
Well, it's fucking scum.
These so-called men's rights groups are actually hate groups.
and stop saying that men's rights advocates are guilty of hate speech. I'll happily put aside differences and work with these good feminists to solve the bigger problems that current emojis don't represent me feminists are preventing us from talking about by pulling fire alarms at any discussion that don't focus solely on women, as if women are not strong enough to solve our own petty little problems with a little bit of maturity and common sense.
What is third wave feminism? Because I've often heard you folks insist that you have no objection to feminism in general. It's specifically third wave feminism that you have a quarrel with. So what is third wave feminism specifically? And what specifically about third wave feminism do you have such a problem with?
Do you really not know that third wave feminism is what feminism became after the last millennium? That's the feminism that takes the smallest problems faced by society, claiming that they are specific to women, or to black people, or whatever minority you can think about, and exaggerates them so much that we just roll our eyes and think of them as idiots. You know, the problems that you grew up with when your parents said, well, stick up for yourself, or grow up then. Daddy bought me a new pony, but what I really wanted was an iPhone. Daddy is a sexist pig. That sounds stupid to you.
Why is it that this feminist represents all feminists, but this men's rights activist doesn't represent all men's rights activists?
Whoa, wait, sexism all of a sudden? Ladies and men are different? So we're supposed to punch men and not hit ladies and open doors for men but not ladies? Fuck you, get out of my face, you tiny piece of shit.
Name an anti-SJW or anti-feminist who says she, Jigglypuff, represents all feminists. I would quite happily accept a feminist who wasn't insane as a nice feminist. Jigglypuff is a bloated land whale who refuses to grow up, and that man you show, whoever he is a whiny little crybaby who also refuses to grow up. Neither of them represents the entirety of either of the groups that you label them as. I view them as individuals, and as individuals, they need to be called out. Just as much as the feminists on MTV and BuzzFeed need to be called out individually as being nutcases.
Why am I continually asked to answer for the views of feminists if I agree with feminism's overall aims, but don't agree much with those particular feminists? Does that mean that I can ask you to answer for anybody who labels themselves similarly to you, even if you don't agree much?
Because I am being constantly asked to answer for the crimes of my ancestors' activities in slavery, even though my ancestors never owned slaves and weren't even in the same country as the slaves. You are not being asked to answer for the feminists who think we should kill all men, including you. You're being asked why you would ally yourself with that feminist. Catch that? Why you are allying yourself with them. You're being asked to answer for your own actions, not the actions of other people. When I am being told to tell my subscribers not to go onto feminist channels, or I'm personally responsible for their actions, I have the right to ask the same thing of a feminist.
SJWs are bad because they spend too much time whining and don't talk about real problems. Then why aren't you talking about those problems instead of just whining about the other people over and over and over for literally years?
I'm trying to talk about the real problems. When I do, I get told I'm sexist. I get told that I have internalized misogyny. I try to address the balance when women are whining about men's reactions to their periods. I'm trying to talk about male genital mutilation, which is still legal. Feminists are standing in the way of outlawing that and protesting when it looks like men are going to get equal reproductive rights.
Why don't you seem as concerned with actual feminist theory in academia as you are with wrecking people for views?
Because feminist theory in academia is ridiculous. And it's just widening the gender divide by putting all men in the role of the bad guy. It is not based on fact. It is not rational. And it's just playing on the victim complex. It's sexist towards men and women. Men are rapists and women are incapable of doing anything without the help of feminism.
Since so many of you profess to be admirers of second-wave feminism as opposed to third-wave feminism, I thought it would be interesting to ask which second-wave feminists in particular do you appreciate? Which books written by second-wave feminists have you read and found interesting? Which second-wave feminist activists have you specifically admired as you formed the opinion that you like second-wave feminism but you have no use for third-wave feminism? I'm just curious.
I'm not going to answer this one because I'm not one who appreciates second-wave feminism. You're obsessed with the waves, aren't you? Feminism, right from the get-go, has been a sexist organisation whose only goal has been to separate male and female and prove that all men are evil and all women are perfect little angels who can't do anything wrong.
You do understand that reading the title of a book or an article or watching the first 15 seconds of a video is not going to give you a deep, nuanced understanding of what that book or article or video is about, right? That being said, how can you expect to understand or critique feminist sources if you don't even attempt to understand what they're trying to say?
I have never, in my life, critiqued a video or article without reading it. Feminists have. They'll quite happily flag a video as offensive based solely on the title or who uploaded it. Sometimes you're part of a group that does the things you're blaming another group for. Can you live with that?
Why is trying and failing to debunk a study into sexual assault the #1 priority for a rational thinker now?
It's called critical thinking. Can you spell that for me? It's oh, never mind, it's too long a word for you, isn't it? I do not ever believe a fact without checking its sources first. If you want to tell me that sexual assault is a huge problem for women, but not for men, I want to know where you got that information from. Because I can easily find a more reliable source to prove that it's a huge problem for both genders.
One of the major arguments that I see in many of your videos is that it is possible to separate criticism of the religion of Islam from the actual Muslim people. And yet, this line seems to be crossed very often. I see things like raghead or camel fucker or other things like that in your comment sections. I see people taking very serious shots at Muslims in videos and hangouts, and they don't get called out. At least not that I can see. So my question is this: why should a person of conscience who is concerned about the Muslim people and their community not being harmed or mistreated, why should they believe that you're actually only attempting to look at the ideas and talk about the ideas if you ignore bigotry that's occurring right in front of you? And in that light, would you be willing to break bread and salt with moderate Muslim people on your videos, have hangouts, invite them to your channels, just in order to build some bridges there and to learn more about what they think and how they feel and what their experience has been, so that information and knowledge can be furthered?
I've broken bread with Muslims in real life. Does that count? Of course, most of them didn't let me speak. They only wanted to talk about how Muslims are always morally better than me. I quite happily go into a hangout with a Muslim if I thought that Muslim had any intention of actually giving me a chance to say what I have to say, and then listens to my opinions and my answers. Got any in mind who might fit that bill? I'd be willing to bet I could make him or her an atheist by the end of the debate.
Do you deny that systemic racism against black people is like a thing in general? If so, what? Okay, just step over, just cover your ears for a second and let the smart people talk. If not, why is it so much more important to you to demonize groups like Black Lives Matter than to actually use your platforms to discuss actual solutions to issues surrounding race and racism?
Because I'm white and I have never owned a black slave. Because you're black and you have never been a slave. Because Black Lives Matter claims that we have nothing to lose but our chains. Show me the bloody chains.
If you've ever discussed or done a video about black on black crime, when are you going to do a video about white on white crime and what we as white people can do to solve the problems in our community?
When are Black Lives Matter going to accept that black on black crime exists? I call out anyone who makes an outrageous claim that can't be proven, like this systematic racism rubbish. It's not my job to confront crime. That's the job of the police and the courts. I don't talk about black on black crime either. But if Black Lives Matter will stop claiming that everything white people do is somehow oppressing them, then I'll have no reason to call them out on it, will I?
Why is a literal teenager's different definition of racism from you so horrifying that you all have to go, "No! No, we have to stop him! We've got to debunk him now!" Ah!
Because that literal teenager that you showed me thinks you are racist just because you're white. She thinks that you are misogynistic just because you're male. She thinks that you are transphobic because you're cisgendered. She thinks that you are homophobic because you're heterosexual. And she makes trans people look like lunatics, making it harder for actual trans people to come forward and feel accepted. Because she's doing it for oppression points. I'm defending the rights of all people, including you.
Wherever did you get the idea that racism was a self-applied identity? And if the only true racists are the racists who self-identify as racists, how can we ever expect to make any social progress to reduce racism? Or did I just answer my own question?
I lived in a city in England for 4 years where a company could be sued for racial discrimination if they hired a white person over an Asian person. While I lived in that city, I was attacked by 5 Asian guys because I'm white. And I was the one who faced criminal charges for racial discrimination, while the 5 guys who attacked me were patted on the head and sent off to play. I'm sick of the double standards where it's okay for a black person to be racist, but a white person will face criminal charges. And I'm sick of people telling me that black people cannot be racist. I take everyone on an individual basis, and I do not give the benefit of the doubt because of the colour of their skin.
You often say that you are for equality of opportunity, but if people of color, for instance, have to overcome barriers whites do not, such as discrimination and unequal treatment as are well documented in various studies, then how can the current situation be thought of as equal opportunity in any real way? And why do you consider it racist to discuss these issues?
If it can be proven that a black person is discriminated against in a job interview, I will quite happily call out the person who is racist. You have to be able to prove it first, though. If these studies show that people are, in fact, being refused opportunities just because they're not white, I want to make sure that there weren't any other factors which could reasonably disqualify the person being interviewed. Well, the studies that you mentioned looking specifically for the racism, because that's bias. Find someone else to do the studies. Someone who is not biased towards finding something, because a biased person is going to twist absolutely everything to prove that they were correct when they started it. Study properly. Study scientifically.
Do you understand basic English syntax? Like, if I say this cat is pretty, I don't mean that all other cats aren't pretty. Like, do you really not get why saying all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter is not only racially insensitive, but just patently ridiculous?
Why is it ridiculous? By saying Black Lives Matter, you're saying Black Lives Matter. You do not include the white lives. By saying all lives matter, you're saying all lives matter. You're including black lives, white lives, pink lives, and green lives. Why should I be focused on only black lives at the expense of looking at the whole picture and understanding that white lives are in as much danger as black lives? Sometimes white lives are at higher risk than black lives.
Isn't it offensive to men to assume that a man could only ever want equality for women and therefore be comfortable with feminism as a whole in order to get laid, and that reduces us to beasts? If that was the case, wouldn't I attempt to get laid from my views instead of not ever trying that?
Isn't it offensive to have feminists claiming that men can't control themselves and they're born rapists, thereby reducing them to beasts? Isn't it offensive to assume that women are incapable of doing anything for themselves without the help of feminism? I feel like I just said that.
If you say you're an egalitarian, will you call out the man-hating slurs that you see coming from people within your community? People who use terms like cuck, beta male, faggot, or mangina? All of these things basically distill men down into thinking that the most important thing about them is to be having sex with a woman. That's rather offensive. So what are you doing to stop this kind of behavior in your community?
Yes. A simple answer, but yes. Although I do want to see the context of that abuse first. Was it justified? Was it a joke? Was it a retaliation for the same reverse actions? Was it spoken because of sexism, or was it spoken to get a rise out of someone too fragile to deal with it themselves?
What is the number of followers, the number of likes, the number of dislikes, the number of retweets, the number of subscribers, any of those numbers, any of those metrics? What have they got to do with the argument?
I thought these were reasonable questions. What kind of stupid question is that? I don't care how many subscribers a person has. If they're going to spew lies and talk nonsense, I'm going to call them out on it. When I had only 3 subscribers, and right now I have 7, I called out a feminist bullshitter who had 260,000 subscribers.
Why is it that you go on and fucking on about safe spaces and trigger warnings and delicate little flowers, but continue to hide behind your cartoon avatars and your childish pseudonyms, and whenever anyone calls you out on your sexist, racist, homophobic, bigoted rhetoric, you become the argument of your own scorn and are hashtag triggered, as they say?
I hide behind my little kitty to protect my identity and the identities of my friends and family, to prevent people in my real life from fucking up my real life because I hurt their precious feelings, which happens way too often for me to stop hiding behind my little kitty. I use trigger warnings if I'm about to show an image or play a sound that might actually cause distress in my audience. I do not use trigger warnings to tell people what they themselves should feel offended by. Of course, there's something that I've noticed. Half of the people asking those questions are also hiding behind cartoon avatars and pictures. Why don't you ask them why they do it? They probably have the same reasons. Why is it okay for them to do it but not for me to do it? Stop with the double standards, then maybe we can get somewhere. That's what we're trying to get through to you, you stupid git.
Are you willing to publicly acknowledge and admonish the massive amount of hatred, bullying, harassment, and intimidation that a lot of your fans infringe upon people? And I don't mean these tiny disclaimers that you put under the description fold or flash for 2 seconds at the beginning of the video that you know nobody reads. I mean a public and ongoing anti-bullying stance. Or do you kind of like watching your fans go around harassing people and calling them slurs and telling them to kill themselves? You kind of like it, don't you?
Are you? Should I be held responsible for the actions of somebody else? Should you be held responsible for the actions of your fans? Screw that. If my fans want to go up and harass feminists, that's on them and them alone. There's nothing I can do to stop them from doing it.
Why do you find it so hard to believe that feminists are being harassed online?
Because I want to see the evidence, and such evidence is never provided. Do you think it's only feminists who face harassment online? Maybe feminists can also be guilty of harassment. Because feminists claim harassment even if the harasser is only disagreeing with some bullshit that they've said. That's not harassment.
Do you understand the key importance of reproducibility and repeatability in scientific research? That's simply going to Google Scholar, doing a 30-second search for keywords and pulling out the first paper you find that backs up your stance is not a particularly credible way to do research. That you have to have a much broader overview, to read the material, to follow the citations through, to look at the broad brush approach to a particular problem.
Yes. Do you? Do you understand that taking the first feminist article that you find and believing every word it says is terrible research? I check my sources. I check my sources. I even check my sources. Do you, or do you just, how to put this into feminist words? Listen and believe?
If you identify as an egalitarian, then I'm interested in your take on the usefulness of the concept of the original position as laid out by John Rawls in his theory of justice.
Could you spell that, please? I can't find out what you're referencing. As far as I'm aware, being an egalitarian means that if I see an injustice, then I get to call it out as an injustice, regardless of whether it's being done to men, women, or children, regardless of what race the person is, whether or not they have a disability, regardless of what their sexuality is or their gender identity. Within reason, I don't believe in this 56 plus genders. For me, in particular, it means that I argue for justice based on an individual basis rather than she's female, therefore she's always right, or he's black, therefore he's the one I should be helping. If a woman can be proven to be abusing a man, I am as appalled as when a man can be proven to be abusing a woman. Whether or not I can personally do anything about it is a different story. Often, the only action I can take is to call someone who is an official representative of the law.
As a supporter, as a proponent of freedom of speech, why do you want to quash academic freedom? If you're not familiar with the concept of academic freedom, it's worth, in the UK at least, looking up the 1988 Education Reform Act and seeing what that says about the rights of academics to put across unpopular opinions.
There's a difference between academic freedom and running off to hide when people don't agree with you. I don't want to see a doctor who only got into medical school to fill a quota. I want to see a doctor who proved that he or she was dedicated enough to make sure that they weren't squeamish at the sight of blood and could do the job properly. I don't want to have a lawyer trying to help me in the unlikely event that I will be raped. If that lawyer went to a law school that allowed its students to hide in a little room and play with Play-Doh whenever the class had to talk about rape law.
Why are you so obsessed with Anita Sarkeesian?
Because Skamita Sarkeesian conned over $1 million to prove that video games that I enjoy were promoting sexism without providing adequate evidence for those claims. Because she claims it cost over $64,000 per video to do research into her preconceived claims, when all she does is pull snippets out of other people's videos and cut out any part in those videos that prove her wrong. Because I have not had a male avatar in a video game in 9 years, and I've witnessed sexist behaviour only 3 times, once from a woman. While Skamita says it happens to every woman every time they log on. Because she's a fucking liar who belongs in prison for fraud and tax evasion. On her non-profit organisation that has pulled in more money than I could make in my entire life. Through lies and the perpetual victim status that she's accruing. Because she is ruining my hobby for everyone to make herself fucking famous. There you go. Reasonable answers to somewhat reasonable questions. I question, though, whether or not the people asking the questions are going to actually listen to the answers and contemplate what I'm trying to put across. More likely that they're going to stick their fingers in their ears, close their eyes, and pretend it never happened. Not just my answers, but the answers that they've been given by loads of other anti-SJWs before me and after me. I hope to do it again sometime. It was fun. I'll see you in my next video.